How are emotions connected to the movie Man on Fire? What is emotion? A complex reaction pattern involving experiential, behavioral, and physiological elements. Emotions are how individuals deal with matters or situations they find personally significant. A feeling is the result of an emotion and may be influenced by memories, beliefs, and other factors. According to Darwin, we should not consider ourselves the only species that has emotions. Animals too present fear, rage, and possibly something even akin to love. Consider swans who mate for life and mourn despondently at the loss of a mate. Hard-drinking burnout ex-CIA operative John Creasy has given up on life until he's hired as a bodyguard to protect 9-year-old Pita Ramos. Bit by bit, Creasy begins to reclaim some of his soul, but when Pita is kidnapped, Creasy's fiery rage finally released and he will stop nothing to save her as he sets out on a dangerous, revenge-fueled rescue mission.
There are several components of emotion. Number 1, the perception of emotion arousing stimuli. Number 2, subjective feeling or experience of emotion. Number 3, involuntary physiological changes in body internal balance. 4, external bodily changes. 5, cognitive factors, awareness of situation, previous or experienced memory. 6, voluntary behavioral consequence, a response to the stimulus. While it usually agreed that 1 comes first and 6 come last of the above components, the order of 2 to 5 or their relative importance is still matter of discussion and theory. These are some basic emotions of human experience: happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, and surprise. Evolved to handle fundamental life tasks, fear and anger can aid survival influence on organism either to flee safety or fight to defend itself. The elements of basic emotion can be combined to form complex or compound emotion.
Recognizing emotions. It has been suggested that we first name emotions to ourselves by observing them in others. But how accurate are we in observing emotions in others? Certainly, there seem to be emotional experiences that have universally recognizable facial expressions, as cross-cultural studies have shown. Morris, 1982. Ekman, 1982 suggested there are 6 primary emotions: sadness, happiness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. To this list, another researcher, Plutchik, 1980, added acceptance and expectancy. The more basic emotions act something like building blocks. More complex, sometimes mixed emotions are blendings of these more basic ones. Connection to the movie. The emotion felt by every character in the movie is anger, sadness, madness, and love. Throughout the movie, from beginning to end, we saw some scenes that felt like we felt the emotion they shown in the movie. It's great to watch the movie, full of conflicts but can make us touch.
Can we determine this by finding out how good we are at recognizing emotions in others? The primary emotions are anger, fear, sadness, disgust, surprise, anticipation, trust, and joy. Presumably, we all have expectations of how our emotions will be portrayed. That's why actors are successful. But as humans, we do not always show the facial expressions others would expect us. When Pita got scolded by Creasy by asking multiple times, Pita felt sad. She was quiet in the meantime and went to the backseat of the car. Creasy feels guilty about it and does not think it's a child. Not only do facial muscles expressing emotions provide feedback to the brain indicating what they are doing, but it also enhances the mood that's being experienced. It was demonstrated experimentally by Ekman, who told participants he was measuring facial muscles movement and asked them to arrange facial in particular ways. The resulting expressions corresponded to basic emotions such as anger, disgust, happiness, and fear, although the subjects were not expressly told that they were portraying emotional states.
Facial expressions are used by humans to convey various types of meaning in various contexts. The range of meaning spans basic, possibly innate, socio-emotional concepts such as surprise to complex and culture-specific concepts such as carelessly. The range of contexts in which humans use facial expressions spans responses to events in their environment to particular linguistic constructions within sign languages. Also states that a facial expression is a form of nonverbal signaling using the movement of facial muscles. An integral part of communication, the facial expression also reflects on individual's emotional state. It was found that when participants were portraying happiness and disgust, their heart rate slowed. For anger and fear, heart rates were accelerated. This would seem to suggest that feedback from facial muscles can affect autonomic arousal. These effects were stronger than when the same participants were overtly asked to feel these emotions. Connection to the movie. One of the things that affected Creasy's life was Pita's scene with Creasy, in which he refused to chit-chat with her in the car. He couldn't ignore her and he decided that keeping her safe was a good reason to live.
Facial expressions are very important to humans as a species and other primates too. Not only is it important for us to recognize the faces of people we know, but also their facial expressions tells us what sort of mood they are in. Happiness is an emotional state characterized by feelings of joy, satisfaction, contentment, and fulfillment. While happiness has many different definitions, it is often described as involving positive emotions and life satisfaction. When Creasy gives attention to Pita, Pita feels happy about it. Creasy becomes coach of Pita in swimming and she feels comfortable. Also, she talks about her problems and she is happy because there's someone there for her. 3 sensitive neurons have been identified in the inferior cortex of the temporal lobe, in the visual association area, which is next to the visual cortex identified earlier. Baylis et al. 1985 found that most of these neurons are insensitive to recognize differences between faces. This sensitivity would suggest why you may well recognize someone's face but cannot remember their name.
However, the ability to recognize emotions in other people's faces may be mediated by the indifferent area of the brain. The year 1983 found that a prosopagnostics, a person who cannot recognize faces usually through temporal lobe damage, can still recognize and name emotions in faces. Evidence from patients with stroke or accidental brain damage suggests that the right hemisphere seems to recognize emotions more easily. Etkoff, 1985. Fried, 1982 found that stimulation of the middle temporal gyrus disrupted the recognition of emotions. Recognition of emotions in others is also mediated by voice patterns, especially pitch, timing, and accentuation. A rise in pitch, for example, indicates fear or alarm. This seems to be a universal signal, whereas others may be culturally based. Evidence from damaged individuals again implicated the right hemisphere as being more involved than the left, Lay and Bryden, 1982.
Physiological aspects of emotion. When we are experiencing emotion, several internal changes take place, which are mainly involuntary. Observation of the emotion-arousing stimulus produces activity in the cortex, subcortical structures. In particular, the hypothalamus are also notified. This prompts the sympathetic section of the ANS, the activity division, into action, accelerating heart rate, increasing blood pressure, dilating pupils, and all the other involuntary responses necessary for the increased activity. You may wish to repress your memory, actions of the ANS, and organs of the body. When kidnapping of Pita happened, someone shot Creasy 4 times and left him to die. By the time he wakes up, he finds out that Pita is dead. He decided now that he had one reason to live, and it was revenge.
In addition, the hypothalamus sends nervous impulses to the pituitary gland, which brings the endocrine system into play. The adrenal glands release adrenaline, which maintains the increased heart rate, thereby assisting the body's activity. Saliva production is not needed during strong emotions, as eating and digestion will not be taking place at the same time, and insulin production and release will be slowed. Strong emotions such as fear, anger, or extreme grief arouse sympathetic responses in the ANS. Quieter emotions such as contentment and sadness are thought to activate the parasympathetic division of the ANS. He promised himself to kill everyone that had to do with Pita's kidnapping, and he did it. Creasy's transformation from a grief man to a father to a killer was a big change for him. Creasy's transformation because of the anger that he feels when he sees someone that close to him dies in front of him.
The perception of an emotion-arousing stimulus brings about physiological changes involving the ANS and the endocrine system. Facial expressions that accompany these emotions send feedback information from the facial muscles via nerves to the cortex. Some of these facial expressions are almost certainly innate and have been demonstrated across cultures. Others may have been learned through early social interactions. The recognition of faces and facial expressions is important to us as a species in that it conveys important social information. Creasy is burnt out from all the death and horror and has taken to alcoholism to ease the burden. He even attempts suicide, which fails when his gun misfires. He replaces her parents in their absence, giving her advice and coaching her in her swimming lessons and competitions. Our emotions are an important part of our lives. It gives us meaning and connects us to one another. Emotions help us identify our feelings, and that conveys important social information. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again.